Not that you care, but I thought that some people might, some people might wonder why it is that I choose not to get political. Do politics and things in the world not concern you, Wild Bill? I'm not going to lie to you. I used to be so over the top buried in that stuff that it consumed me. And I don't know. I just made a decision that I wasn't going to be, I'm not going to spend my thought life on those things. I'm going to think about, ponder upon, be concerned with, and have passion for something else. Let me read you some verses of Scripture. Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 45, it says, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling, saying to them, "It is written, and my Father's house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a robber's den, cave." And he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the leading men among the people were trying to destroy him, and they could not find anything that they might do, for all the people were hanging on to every word that he said. Why this passage and what it has to do with what I'm talking to you about, as far as, not getting so tied up in world events with my mind. And it's not that I don't think about it at all. Please don't misunderstand me. But here, when Jesus comes into the temple, and by the way, this is the last time. The first time he came into the temple 3 years ago, it was on Passover, and he had made a whip, and he went in, and the Scripture says he cleansed the temple, essentially. He whipped people, beat them out of there because they had made it a den of thieves. Turned over the money changers' tables, run them off, drug them out of there. It was a awesome thing that he was doing there, a miracle. He physically removed several 100,000 people. And here, when Jesus comes into the temple again 3 years later, his thought process hadn't changed at all. Here Jesus doesn't attack the occupiers, the Romans. He doesn't attack the governing authorities, the world leaders, maybe a particular flag of a particular nation. He doesn't attack the house of Pilate, the pathetic Roman appointed ruler of Israel. He doesn't attack the pagan idolaters, those occupying Romans. He attacks the temple. He attacks those in the temple. He attacks Judaism. He attacks the most respected, the most elevated, the most trusted form of worship of all the people in the land. And that just flies in the face of what people think that people that follow the Master should be thinking about. He attacked those who, in appearance anyway, represented God. He attacks the most corrupt of all things in Jerusalem, which was, guess what it was? Religion. The corrupted true religion, or how do I say it? The true religion that the people had corrupted. He demonstrated he was on divine mission. I mean, look at verse 45 and 46 again in this chapter. He says, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out those who were selling, saying to them, "It is written, and my house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a robber's den." You know, he could have went anywhere, but he went into the temple. He could have attacked anybody and won, but he went into his Father's house. You know, the people hoped he would go to Pilate and the Roman army to overthrow them, you know, get some freedom from the oppression of the occupying Romans. You know, maybe deliverance from idolatry that was rampant, you know, of that day and of the ruling authorities, or deliverance from the taxation system that was imposed on them that was unbelievably high. You know, earlier in his ministry, they saw him create food, and you know, this guy, he can take care of us physically. He has power to liberate us from demons. He can free us from this military occupation. This, you know, he can free us. What am I trying to say? Politically, socially, and economically, he can take care of all these things. You know, they tried to force him to be king. You know, after he had fed the 5,000, 25 to 30,000 in reality, based on women and children there as well. The next day when they got up to eat some breakfast, because they expected him to make them breakfast, they were going to try to make him king, force him. But when Jesus entered the city, and when he come into the city, he was essentially inaugurated by the people, because you remember in verse 38 of that chapter, it says something like, the king, blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. They're saying, you're the king. But the first thing he did as king was not make war on the world's political and economic and social system. You know, he came with no army and no dignitaries and made no attack on any earthly institution whatsoever. He attacked the temple. He went into the temple of God, mind you, which was being desecrated and dishonored and blasphemed. And, you know, to Jesus, how much time have I got? Well, I'm out of time. Well, let me say this real quick. You know, the issue with Jesus was not the governments of the world, i.e. the Roman occupation. You know, the major issue was the corruption of the Father's house, the temple, the place where the Father is supposed to have his dwelling, the place where he is supposed to rule and reign supreme. The issue is the corruption of his place. And there's more to it than that, and I will talk to you more about it later. But ponder on these things and take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt.